This is the power of art in the best sense. I think for me, it brought up a lot of stuff in terms of my relationship to music and expression and creativity, but just the amount of success that I had with music and then it ending the way that it did and being traumatic. I think for a long time, it was hard for me to get out of the headspace of like making music is about selling records, and making money and having hits. And in the best sense, I think that being a great pop artist is a fulfilling thing to do. It's an art form like anything else. But before we got to that place as a band, like my relationship to music was completely authentic. Welcome to another episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dusick. I was the founding drummer of Maroon 5, but I'm now a licensed therapist, author, and mental health advocate. On today's show, we're having another one-on-one where we check in with my co-host, as usual, Brian Duck Maillard. How you doing, Duck?
Am I your co-host as usual, or am I just your usual co-host?
As usual, you are my co-host.
Got it. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. I feel like I'm like in costume, like because I'm kind of accessorized. I have a hat on. I have glasses on. I have these newer boots on. It's like I'm in different wardrobe, but there's reasons for everything. I have glasses on because I have a pimple here that I don't want everyone to see. I have a hat on because I took a shower last night and my hair's crazy. And I'm wearing these boots because I've got them at a thrift store and I need to break them in because they're not very comfortable.
And because they were made for walking. So.
They were made for walking. So I'm just going to sit here because that's what I'll do.
Well, you do look a little bit more kind of cool.
Like I see guys on podcasts who are like, they come in. Like I remember Ben Feldman came on our podcast and he had a hat on. I was like, that's so cool. I should wear a hat. Baller. And I was like, so I'm going to try it. But
makes it a little bit more aloof. Is it more casual or more aloof?
You see, it doesn't feel more casual to me. It feels, like I said, it feels a little bit like I'm wearing a wardrobe. And I think that's because of the shoes. Because as an actor, like when you're in rehearsals as an actor myself. No, honestly, when you're like rehearsing a play and you're putting it on its feet and you can't really find it. The minute the wardrobe department gives you the shoes for your character, you're like, oh, I feel it. Like it changes the way you walk. It changes the way you stand, everything. And these boots like click like grown-up shoes. Like so when I walk, it's like click, click, click. I sound like a high school principal walking down the Does
it make you want to tap dance?
Oh, of course. Always. Yeah. So
I always want to tap dance.
I do, especially in clicky clacky shoes.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I feel a little bit like I'm not myself in the same way, but in a good way. Okay. I feel like
you're in character.
Yeah, I'm in character. I'm podcast host Duck and not just casual dressed like a slob Duck.
See, I was wondering because that is a bold statement, not just wearing a hat. I mean, obviously you're a Yankees fan,
I am.
But as we know, my Dodgers just won the World Series.
They did.
You come walking in with a Yankees hat. So I was wondering, is this some kind of statement?
No, I figured it had been a week and a half, and so I could get away with it again. Look, I'm a non-confrontational sports fan in that, like, I grew up Yankees, Red Sox, and like living in New York City, it was easy. But a lot of my friends were Red Sox fans. And I never liked the like contentious Boston sucks, like because they didn't suck, they were good. And same with the Yankees, like when Red Sox fan. And I can't deny the Dodgers have just won back-to-back World Series with the best player on the planet. Like any attempt to delegitimize that would be just make me seem like a bitter Betty, and I'm not that. So congratulations to your Dodgers. Still ride or die for my Yankees and hope for next year. Garrett Cole's going to be back.
Are you anti-Dodgers though?
No, I actually love the Dodgers as an LA resident for 20 years. If I had to pick a National League team, it's the Dodgers.
And your son is a casual
And my son is a
fan.
casual. Oh, this year he was like, "Can we watch the game tonight?" Like the World Series. He was like, "Is there a game tonight?" For the first time. And while I was like, part of me was dying because it wasn't a Yankee. The fact that he was really into it was exciting to me. So yeah, we watched it. And Max Muncy is his favorite player.
Really?
Isn't that? I think that's so cool that it's off the beaten path. He likes the glasses. He likes the look. I don't know.
He's kind of an everyman.
He's
Max
a good
Muncy.
Utility guy, great third baseman. So
he's got that look. He's just like a hearty, all-American,
dirty,
working class
always
baseball
got the scruff.
player.
Yeah.
So. Whenever I hear that, when somebody says like, "Oh, he's a real working class player," I'm like,
he's not very good. It means he's not very good. Yeah,
and I feel like it's associated with white guys,
little white guys like Dustin Pedroia, or like it's always been that way. And hey, I'll wear it with pride. If you don't have the athleticism and the skill, you got to work twice as hard. And I think,
I feel like there's a little bit of a racial undercurrent there of like, the darker skinned players are flashy or like, there's a lot of different terms that are used. And then when you talk about a guy who's just a hardworking man's man, he's like, he's working class player.
I remember a video.
As if they're trying harder.
Right. I remember a video. I can't remember who the other player was, but it was Steve Kerr, now coach of the Golden State Warriors, and an African-American basketball player. And they were laughing about how there was always this code of, if it's a white player who maybe lacks some athleticism, they think, what a heady, intelligent play.
Right.
And if it's a black player, it's, man, what an athletic guy. And so they would always joke like the opposite, be like, did you see that athletic move that white guy made? And the black guy would be like, yeah, did you see that really smart, intelligent play the black guy made? Like,
oh, God.
Subverting the stereotypes. But it's true. There's a code that, I think everyone understands what it is, and people try to dance around it, but
Well, all that to be said, Max Muncy is a working man's ball player.
Let's go, Max. So congratulations to your Dodgers. Are you still riding high on that?
I kind of am.
That was a World Series for the ages. That was.
Oh man, it was the most exciting. It kept me enthralled. 7 games. Every game was exciting, and it went back and forth.
Game 7 was 2 outs away from being a Toronto victory. That was it.
And honestly, if Toronto had won, I would have felt really good for them. They were kind of the team of destiny in a lot of ways. But it's amazing, though, that the Dodgers, being the big Goliath, that they won. And people are not that pissed off, at least in my circles.
You're in LA.
Yeah, but even turning on like ESPN and MLB channel, I feel like everyone is just stoked about how great a baseball series that was for everyone.
It does remind me, not to make everything about the Yankees, but the 96 to then 98 and 99, like when the Yankees started three-peating, by that third year, everyone was like, all right, enough with the fucking Yankees. People start to resent, and they say, and then it becomes, you bought your championships, you didn't, and so be ready for that. Be ready for the
Dodgers
backlash.
have become the Yankees of this decade for sure. It's not just the 90s. The Yankees go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Like every decade except for the 80s. The 80s was the only one. 80s.
And
poor
now,
Don Manning.
Now we're 16 years without a championship now. The Yankees. So it's a long drought, but
anyway, no, it was a lot of fun. I had quite a weekend.
Really?
Watched those last 2 games, 6 and 7, and then on the sheer excitement of that, I jumped on a plane and went to Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas.
Yeah, to go see Alanis Morissette in concert.
Sweet.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was actually, I have to say, I've been thinking about it for a week since. It was really moving to me. I would say that I was always an Alanis fan. Like when she came out, I thought she was great, and I wouldn't say I was fanatical to the degree that a lot of young women were fanatical at the time. But in retrospect, I appreciate her probably even more than I did then, because I was a 90s guy and I was into a lot of like harder rock. But she really fit into my aesthetic and ethos of.
And Jagged Little Pill is a seminal, angry young woman album. I mean, my wife will die for that album.
Yeah.
She was right in that demo. And so, Alanis brings it.
All that said, though, going to the show, I was like, oh, that'll be cool. It's kind of, a throwback to my teenage years. And I expected it to just be a concert that would be enjoyable. But it was like a whole production. It was a show.
Yeah.
Kind of like a one-woman show where she did like a whole retrospective of her life and
telling some stories and stuff.
Well, she came out before she even sang a note and just started talking.
Nice.
To the crowd as if it was a one-woman show. And there were skits, and there was...
Wait, what?
There were skits, and there was segments where she was acting, and it was like a Broadway show, I swear to God. I did not expect that at all. And you know me, like I'm not really like a musical theater guy. I appreciate, obviously, a talent of any kind and the production value and all that stuff. But it was moving to me because it was deeply personal, and I got the sense that this was something that she had to live her lifetime up till now to create. And even looking back on things she did that were really impactful artistically earlier in her career have different meaning now.
Yeah.
And she's been sober for 3 years.
Oh, really?
And so there was a bit about that. She talks about abuse and trauma she went through and about her relationship with men and bad choices she's made. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff in there. And then she even like had a chalkboard and she explained like mental health concepts and things.
This is like a Harder to Breathe podcast, like companion piece. This sounds incredible.
No, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much that was going to be up my alley.
Yeah.
And there was one moment where she delved into some sexual abuse where I looked around me and there were so many women around me that were crying.
Yeah.
And I was moved. I mean, I wasn't like crying, but I was welling up. And I don't know how many of these women have experienced that themselves, but it just struck me like this was stuff she was talking about before the Me Too movement in her music. She couldn't really come out and talk about it openly because it dawned on me like how far we've come in a relatively short period of time, just in terms of our ability to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And what women have been going through since the beginning of time, and just relatively recently, we're starting to have a little bit more compassion. I mean, I like to think that I always had compassion, but at the same time, it's just in the public discourse in our culture, when somebody writes a song about rape or about, you remember in the 90s when Tori Amos was like the first poster child, she like wrote a song about rape.
Me and a gun.
Yeah. And I remember there were a lot of young women that really connected with her over that. But then there was also this sort of like stigma attached to it, like, she's an angry woman just like trying to take down a man. And I didn't feel that way. And let me emphasize, but seeing where we're at now versus where we were then. And, you know, Alanis had that song Hands Clean. I don't know if you remember that song. It was like her second or third album, where, I mean, I'd heard the lyrics and I kind of knew what it was about, but she put the lyrics up on a screen behind her and told the whole story and how people reacted to it. And the verses are from the perspective of her abuser and the chorus is from her perspective. And it was I think probably in that gray area where she probably was, I don't know if she was a teenager still or a young woman in her early 20s, but it was an older man, and it was, you know, a predatory sort of person in a position of power taking advantage of a younger woman sort of. And at the time, nobody got it. And the people who did get it were just like wanted to brush it under the rug. And here she is 20 whatever years later going like, yeah, you didn't pay attention. Like, listen to this now. And it has just different meaning for somebody like me. Again, somebody who likes to think of himself as compassionate towards women and wouldn't have been blasé about it. But like, it took that long for me to take notice of what she was saying and for her platform to reach people like me even. So I just was really moved. I was like, this is the power of art in the best sense. I think for me, it brought up a lot of stuff in terms of my relationship to music and expression and creativity because of, and we've talked about this to a certain extent, but just the amount of success that I had with music and then it ending the way that it did and it being traumatic. I think for a long time, it was hard for me to get out of the headspace of like making music is about selling records, you know, and making money and having hits. And in the best sense, I think that being a great pop artist is a fulfilling thing to do. It's an art form like anything else. But before we got to that place as a band, like my relationship to music was completely authentic. It was completely just artists that moved me, that gave me a feeling. And my desire to make music was from a wholesome place in that regard. Like I want to just get out what's inside of me. And then you see an artist like that who has never really compromised. Like everything she's done has just been a genuine expression of something she's feeling. And I'm sure on some level she's tried to have hits and that kind of thing. But she didn't, even though she had a massive hit just connected at a certain moment, she did not prioritize maintaining top 40 status over just being an artist that says what she needs to say. And I really appreciated that. It reminded me of my relationship with music and kind of inspired me. Like, God, if I could be freed of that burden of my connection to a pop hit in my mind, I think it would free me up to just create for the joy of it again.
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree 100%. I think of music, you know, my dreams of being a successful musician professionally may be over in terms of like, I'm going to write it, but it's never been that way for me because I never had the success that you had. I've always seen songwriting as an emotional vomit, a purge, you know, and so many of my songs, even going back to, you know, the former future days when I was 30 something, were about getting old. All my songs were about like, I'm halfway through life and I'm getting old and I worry about what that means. And I think it's very telling that was what was on my mind then. And even now it's about like, what legacy do I leave behind? What message how do people think of me when I'm gone? You know, things like that. And I think that there's still value in that. Like you say, even if you're not trying to write to sell records or make it, if it's just in this room and you and I jamming or singing someone else's song just for the cathartic release of screaming a Pearl Jam song at the top of our lungs, you know, there's so much value in that, whether it's the creation of that art or just the expression of it, singing someone else's song to express that appreciation and that love for it. There's so much mental health value to it of just like a release, but also of just, going to a place where you're not thinking, going to a place where it's just emotion. I've told this quote before that I had a directing teacher once. It said, music is cheating. It bypasses the brain and goes right to the heart. Yeah. So if you're directing something and you want to convey an emotion without doing the work, play a song and the audience will meet you there. But it's true. You hear the first opening strums of Landslide and I'm weeping because I have a son and who's getting older. And, even just saying it, I tear up. So I think we have to remember the reason why we loved it when we were 14 and get back to that anytime we need that escape. You know what I mean?
I think, well, first off, I want to ask you, how would you like to be remembered after you're gone? Is that a bigger question we need to?
No. The same way that I want people to remember the great guys like Max Muncy, where people go, everybody remembers Shohei Ohtani, but you know who was awesome on that team? Max Muncy. Yeah. That guy did all the little things. I'd love to be remembered that way. Duck wasn't the greatest musician. He wasn't the greatest actor. He wasn't this, but man, was he the guy that I always turned to and was always there for me, or was always there with a smile, or when things were chaotic, he was the one that goes, guys, calm down. I got this. That's how I would want to be remembered. I want to be the glue guy who was like always there, could always be counted on, and was always like a positive force, and I work on that sometimes because I know sometimes I can get down, I can get angry, I can get frustrated. I don't want to be remembered that way. I don't want my son to be like, well, dad died 20 years ago, but he was always so angry. Like I want him to be like, man, my dad was fucking just the best. That's all I want,
Wow.
So
wow. Well, that's beautiful.
How about you?
I think
ever thought about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of in transition for me. I've been doing a lot of pondering because a lot of my life has been about achievement. And that is a hard thing for me to let go of, but I've been thinking about it more of late than ever in my life. I think at a certain point in my life, I would have wanted to be remembered for my achievements. And to a certain extent, I still do, but I have realized that you achieve something, you get accolades for it, and then it's never enough. You move on to the next thing. I don't want to be remembered for that, for somebody that it was never enough and was just always trying to prove to himself that he was good enough by achieving more stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that I've been lucky enough to do certain things that people will probably, obviously on my
your obituary,
they're going to mention songs about Jane and they're going to mention my book, and hopefully if anyone remembers me at that point. But at the end of the day, you're right. Like those aren't the things that really, those are stats really.
Right.
It's not it's the people that have, I look at your life and I see, I'm like, I don't even know how you maintain all these friendships. You have so many friends on both coasts that you seem to have like maintained for a long time, close relationships with. That's been a challenge for me. Like I've had some really good friends, close friends, and they've sometimes had chapters in my life, people that I was really close with at a certain time, and I've had a hard time maintaining because I am more of an introvert, and I struggle with just the energy that's required to invest myself. I sometimes feel overwhelmed. Like, well, how am I going to invest myself in being the best softball player on Sunday mornings that I could be, and be the best therapist that I could be, and the best speaker, and think about writing my next book or accomplishing or achieving the next thing, and then also be a good dude and be there for my friends all the time. Like sometimes I get overwhelmed wanting to be all the things I'd like to be for myself as much as for other people. I don't really know that I have a definitive answer for that at this point in my life. I just know that I've been thinking in smaller terms of late than I used to, because I used to think in big terms in terms of accomplishments.
But that you showing up on Sunday to play softball with your dad and your friends, that's it. That's the best one you can be. Whether you hit a home run or strike out 4 times, doesn't matter. You're there. Yeah. And you reaching out to a friend that you haven't seen in 2 years and just being like, hey buddy, that's the best you can be. You know what I mean? Like there's no threshold for, well, you're not doing this well enough. Like just doing it is enough.
Well, that's the recovering perfectionist in me, because I guess that's what I'm saying. So if you hold yourself up to being the kind of friend that you're describing, I feel like I'm always failing. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm always missing out on opportunities to be as close to people that I wish I could hold closer. And sometimes it's just not realistic. We all have our own lives.
Yeah.
And the people I went to college with, am I going to see them every weekend and go out and, no. But if I make an effort to see them, every few months and reach out to them, that's something,
But I feel like there's a unwritten contract, especially with those types of relationships, where everyone understands we all have lives. And so if we go 3 years without seeing each other, no one's bitter, no one's resentful. It's no one's fault. And if you can fall back into those rhythms right away, like, then it's a win. You know what I mean? Like there are certain relationships that you just, through nature of not real estate, location, geography, you're not going to be able to maintain them. But as long as you all understand that when we do get together, it's pure and it's sincere, and you're just, the best person, then it doesn't matter how long it's been.
I think also it's not about quantity. Obviously, it's about quality. And there are relationships that served a certain purpose at a time in your life. And maybe it's not realistic that you're going to be close forever. People grow apart and have different lives. But I do think that the people that you choose, the handful of people that you choose to be, important to you, that you invest in those relationships in the long run. I'm thinking more in those terms. Obviously, you as a husband and a parent, that like when the chips are down, when all else fails, those relationships are going to be the most important ones. Right. Those are the ones that you've chosen to make your not your entire world, but the nucleus of your world. And so even though I don't have kids, just like who you choose to be your partner, who you choose to be your best friend, who you choose to say, like, I don't have time to be friends with everyone in the world. And maybe some people have more energy for that than others. Some people like myself don't have the energy or the wherewithal to have 50 close friends. But if I have 3 and I really prioritize those relationships and make a choice to invest myself in those people and in those relationships, then I will feel like I was successful in terms of my personal life. Yeah.
It's interesting to me that you say that you think that I have so many friends on so many coasts, because I honestly feel very lonely, and I feel very removed from all those friends. Yeah, they're maintained through social media and stuff, and we text, but I mean, we've talked about it before that it's hard to have connection in this day and age. And post-COVID, it was really hard. But I feel, if I'm being completely honest in this conversation about how I want to be remembered, sometimes I feel bitter that I put myself out there for people and they don't, like, I'm the guy who's always like, hey, we should get together. And then no one ever takes me up on it. And I go, what am I working so hard for? Obviously, this person doesn't value this friendship. You know what I mean? And so there have been relationships where I'm always the one who's trying to set, get togethers and making the effort, and it's not reciprocated. And I feel very resentful and bitter that it's not reciprocated. You know what I mean? And so, yes, there are a select few relationships that I have that I'm still very close with. You met my best friend, Eric, a couple of weeks ago. We came out, and he's a guy I hadn't seen in 6 years. And the minute he got there, it was just like high school again. But yeah, there is a part of me that, and maybe it's ego. Maybe it is me wanting to be remembered as, man, what a great guy. And that's not the way it works. Like if it's sincere and it's organic, then that's going to happen on its own. But there are times that I wish I got a little bit of that feedback. Like, man, Doc, you really are a great guy. You're a great friend. Thank you. I don't get that sometimes. And I feel...
Is that a mindset shift, though, that you need to consider making in terms of, you have to give it freely and not expect it in return?
Yeah. And
because otherwise you do end up resentful.
Exactly. And I do. And that's the work, and that's mindfulness of being I'm just putting it out there. I'm not putting it out there to get it back. And if I do that, it's sort of like my career. If I go into every audition being I have to get this, the desperation is I'm going to reek of it, and I'm not going to get work. When you let it go and go, I'm just going to put it out in the universe, and good stuff might come back to me. I mean, it's hard. That's a hard mindset for a guy like me to have. But yes.
Why do you think that is?
Because for so many years I was results oriented, the same way you were. It was if I got X number of commercials per year, I'm successful. If I book this job, then I must be a good actor. I'm a little bit more big picture now, especially in the last 5 years as the entertainment industry has completely gone upside down. And people who had who are series regulars on shows are driving Uber, and you know what I mean? Like, there's no rhyme or reason to it anymore. And that's actually kind of freeing. You know, it's freeing to go, well, if that guy who's had multiple shows, like he's been the lead of shows and he can't get a job, then I shouldn't feel so bad that I can't get a job either. You know, it actually freed me up to just kind of be a little bit more zen about it. So I think that's why that shift has happened, because I think there's a shift in our industry. But also as I get older, I realize that stuff isn't worth my energy. The good stuff is what's worth my energy, the positivity, the time with my family, like you say, and those select relationships that have maintained, the people that didn't ghost me, the people that haven't.
When somebody doesn't reciprocate in the way that you would like them to, when you feel like you're really putting yourself out there and it's not being reciprocated, are you essentially taking it personally, like it's a slight to you, or it's some implication of your value as a friend?
Yeah, I did. Now I give people a lot more the benefit of the doubt. I do the whole, you don't know what anyone's going through. So for all I know, you know, they have family issues. They have their own mental health issues that they don't want to reach out. Maybe they're ashamed. So I'm a lot more of a benefit of the doubt kind of guy now, where I go, you know, it's sort of like, as I talked about, I think on our first episode together, my relationship with my father finally got to a place where I go, I'm not resentful that he doesn't reach out to me or love me the way I want him to. I just accept that it is what it is. I don't put too much value. It's not a reflection on me that he didn't, you know, express himself that way to me. It's him. And so all I can do is be the best version of me, and it won't balance out, but all I can control is myself. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yes, the answer is yes. I used to see that as a reflection of I was resentful. Now I'm not. Now I try to be a lot more forgiving and a lot more. I was more resentful. Now I am a lot more. I give people the benefit of the doubt, like I said.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, all you can control is yourself, but also, do you know the 4 agreements? Have we talked about the 4 agreements? It's a book that kind of comes from ancient Toltec wisdom, and it's just basic fundamental principles of life that are like pretty broad reaching, but they have very specific practical value. One of them is nothing is personal. Or I guess the agreement is don't take anything personally. However you say that in Toltec.
We'll put the subtitles down.
But essentially the idea being like, even when something feels like somebody is stabbing you in the heart, it's their shit. It's not a reflection on you. It's not, even when they're like out to get you, it reflects on them and their shit. Like, why would they be out to get you?
Yeah.
It's not something it's not a reflection of you and something that you need to take personally. And you're right. 99% of the time is probably something that is understandable. But even if it is somebody saying, yeah, I'm not going to prioritize Brian anymore in my life. Like his friendship is not important enough for me to reciprocate. And they were like literally consciously thinking that. And you've grown apart and they've made a choice not to prioritize that relationship. Sometimes that just happens, that it's not for any failing of yours. Right. It's like, if that's what's happening, that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want that person in your life anyway. You wouldn't want that relationship if somebody is not willing to prioritize you.
Right.
So at the end of the day, like, it's not even worth being angry at them, or certainly not taking it as some invalidation of self.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah,
I mean, there are relationships that end, romantic relationships that nobody did anything wrong. It's just people realize this wasn't what I was looking for.
But even if it ends badly, if somebody did something bad to hurt you, they did it because of their shortcomings, not because of something you did. I don't say that. I mean, I think a lot of people can use that to dismiss bad behavior. Like, well, anything that anyone thinks bad about me, it's not me, it's them. They're the one. That's a narcissistic way to think.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just when somebody flips you off on the freeway, you know, immediately you get angry, right? You're like, oh, that son of a. But in reality is like, the person is going through whatever they're going through. They're angry for whatever reason. They're late for work. You can't take that personally. And that's true for personal relationships too. I'm not going to say nothing is personal. I don't know if I go that far. But
you know, it's funny. For some reason, the thing I think of is sometimes I watch like Cops, you know, and I watch police chases and things like on YouTube or whatever. And I know that, you know, we're a lot less forgiving, and rightfully so, of glorifying police and the extremes to which sometimes they go to. But I'm always actually kind of impressed by cops who, when someone is raging or someone is fighting, the cops who just maintain hey, I'm not mad at you. It's not personal. I know you're not mad at Dave the cop. You're just mad at the uniform because it's what I represent. And the cops who are able to be like, I'm not angry at you. And even though you tried to swing at me, it's like they don't let emotion get involved. It's very impressive to be able to have that distance. And it's the same sort of message of like, you're angry because of everything that's going on in your life, and I'm the manifestation of that as a guy with a badge. And so you want to take it out on me, but it's not a reflection on me, and I'm not going to take it personally. And I sort of see a parallel in that. It's easier said than done. I'm sure as a cop, it's easier said than done.
Well, especially if you have a background of some kind of trauma relating to the slight or the thing that you're experiencing. Because I have a friend who's a therapist and kind of specializes in trauma and methodologies in trauma. And I learned a lot from her about childhood trauma and the formative aspects of why we carry certain triggers with us later in life. And she said to me, and I found this charming, her goal is to become untriggerable. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And she's like, well, a lot of my life, because of a lot of the trauma that I had as a kid, people could just really affect me a lot. You know, when people did things that were hurtful, it really hurt me to my soul. And things would anger me, and I would get just resentful of people or just overly reactive, you know? And so much of the problems we run to with our personality in terms of the formation of certain things that can be compensations and difficult behaviors and ways that we relate that affect our relationships in negative ways is because we're not even experiencing what's really happening in this moment. We're not experiencing that this person is having a moment and reacting to that. We're projecting all of that trauma from our past onto that moment. And so if you had a formative relationship that was difficult and somebody that, for instance, like you with your dad had his own problems. They had nothing to do with you, and they had no reflection on your worth or it was not an invalidation of you as a son, or you were a kid. But as a kid, you internalize that as somehow I must be doing something wrong. I must not deserve that attention. I must be, it's a reflection of my value when obviously it's not. And so, but when you carry that with you later into life, then when something comes up that reminds you of feeling slighted in the way that you did as a kid, triggers that. And then you're 8 years old and you feel like you don't love me. That must mean that I have no value or that I'm not lovable. Yeah. And it can take a lifetime to try to undo that. But when you become aware of it and you recognize, I think that's what that agreement is about, is recognizing like we're projecting onto people a reflection of ourselves. Yeah. As weird as that is. And if we recognize like, this doesn't have to do with my value. This doesn't have to do with the ways in which I was neglected or traumatized when I was younger. It has to do with this person and this relationship. And there may be reasons why I did something to deserve the fact that they're angry at me or they're decided to, and I need to look at that and reflect on that. But it's not a reflection of my value. It's not a reflection of who I am as a person. It may be for the best. Relationships break up, people move on, and it's just a reflection of that and that person. And sometimes it's entirely just the other person having a moment, or like you said, like they have other priorities, they have other things going on. And so the more you are able to be untriggerable, the more that it comes down to reactivity and emotional regulation. Because in a moment when you have a feeling, you're not thinking necessarily, you're just feeling slighted or feeling angry or feeling hurt or feeling like diminished, like, oh God, am I the problem? You know, when you're able to recognize those triggers and start to move away from them, then as those moments come up, you're able to move more into the rational thought, which is like, oh, well, this is just what happened. It's unfortunate.
But an interesting thing that's happened to me is that when I am cognizant of those triggers and choose to not let them in, my family goes, what's wrong? Why are you not? You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes it is because I've shut down and because I'm like, if I'm feeling, depressed on it, sometimes the lack of jobs and the lack of friends and they get to me.
Yeah.
And I'm down. And my wife can feel it. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I can acknowledge that I'm feeling down, so be ready for it. And she's like, okay, it still doesn't matter. She still is going to be like, what's wrong? What's the matter? What can I do? I'm like, nothing. Stop asking me. You know? And even when I'm making a conscious choice to be like, I'm not going to explode, I'm not going to get mad, my family is constantly being like, this is weird. Why aren't you yelling? I want yelling, Dad. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're used to it. But I find that, especially when I'm I don't want to say depressed, but you know, it's funny. We started this podcast talking about anxiety and how that was such a dominant feeling in our lives. If I'm honest with you, I was thinking about this. I feel depressed more often than I feel anxious nowadays. Mostly because we have a dog. We have a 4-year-old dog that for 4 years has occasionally bitten me. No fault of his own. He's just a reactive dog. And I've learned the things that I can't do that trigger him. So like, he doesn't like to be picked up. So, you know, 2 years ago, I tried to pick him up. He bit me. Now I go, okay, I don't pick him up. If he has something that he's not supposed to have, I don't try to take it from him. I give him a treat and then I take it. You know, it's like I've learned the ways to avoid those triggers. You know what I mean? So I don't think that it's that I don't get anxious anymore. It's that I know what the things that are going to trigger me, and not that I avoid them, but I have workarounds. Like I know if I have an audition coming up, how I have to prepare. If I have a meeting, you know, things like that. So that's a testament to the good work that I've done over the years of mental health. But depression, I feel, is sort of sneakier in that the external, it almost happens after the fact. You know, anxiety happens before I have something exciting. Depression happens after I've failed or not achieved.
Right.
You know, and depression is such a weird gray area because everyone feels depressed. And sometimes people even say like, yeah, I'm depressed. I don't know if I'm clinically depressed, you know, and I think that anxiety and depression are sort of two sides of the same coin in that they are common feelings that people navigate and have to learn how to deal with. When it gets to a point where it's no longer manageable, that's when it becomes clinical, right?
Right, yeah.
You know, but depression is so vague. It's so, sometimes, how do I know when I'm depressed or when I'm just sad? Or how long does it last? If it's affecting my life, if I don't want to get out of bed, if I don't want to eat, is that clinical? You know what I mean? I mean, what?
Well, as a layperson, like how do you, because we use these terms sometimes in like colloquial ways that don't necessarily correspond with the way we use them therapeutically or diagnostically. Yeah. So how do you see the difference between being depressed and just being sad? I
don't know. That's the question. I mean, like when I'm sad, it's sort of like I'm bummed, like for lack of a better term. When I'm depressed, I feel it in my body. I feel like I don't have, I don't react to things. It's like I'm drugged. It's like I'm on some medication that's bringing me down, you know, where I'm like, I see my son do something stupid that I would normally yell at him for. And I just go, fuck it. I don't care. You know, I don't get a job and I'm not bummed about it. I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Of course I didn't get that job. You know what I mean? You really fall into this self-pity thing. And so that's what it feels like to me. And it usually lasts for me a day or two until, and it's almost, there's sometimes where I feel myself leaning into it, where I want to like, I'm watching something and I'll be like, oh, that's funny. But I'd be like, no, I'm depressed. I can't laugh. I have to just be like, you know what I mean? And that's when I know I'm sort of lifting out of it. When I am interested in turning the music on, or I am interested in laughing with my son about something. So that's good. I can sort of self-regulate it. But it does happen every now and then, those dips. And when they're really deep, it's tough. It's tough on my family. It's tough on me because I don't want to do anything. I mean, what do you as the professional, what is the threshold for just being blue or depression?
Well, that was a really good descriptor, and even just the body language that you used was a good way of illustrating the difference, because being sad is a normal reaction to something that is sad or something that makes you sad. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed. Right. Depression, it's in the word, depression. Oh yeah. You're being depressed, pushed down. And the way you kind of like, and the sort of attitude of, I don't even care. I can't even muster enough energy
to care
or to react the way that I normally would. That is an indication of depression, not necessarily clinical depression. There is a difference between the word depression as a descriptor of an emotional state, a mood, and something that is a disorder. depression as a disorder can be cyclical in the same way that things like bipolar can be. It's one of the poles, right?
Yeah.
People have unipolar or bipolar depression, and to varying degrees of it. It's on a spectrum like anything else. At the very highest level of degree, and I've experienced this, I've seen this, it's really scary. You almost can't recognize that person as the person you know.
Really?
They lose the ability to really function completely. And you see the kind of behavior which you would associate with clinical depression of just like not even being able to get out of bed for days, not like forgetting to or not having the energy to do just basic functions of brushing your teeth, taking a shower, losing appetite, or like extreme swings in things like appetite, like being just eating all the time. I don't care, whatever. I just want to feel good. Or not eating for days, that type of stuff. So it's when it becomes clinical, when it becomes a disorder, it's when it's to an extreme that it's affecting not just your level of distress, but your level of functioning. Yeah. When you're having behavioral symptoms along with a mood. But on the lower end, what you're describing would be qualified as depression, meaning that something that I think all of us have experienced at a certain point is what we call anhedonia.
Never heard that term.
Yeah, it's a useful term.
As in hedonistic?
As in hedonistic, same word root. It took me a while to see that written down and recognize. Yeah, so hedonism is like the pursuit of pleasure, right? Physical pleasure, joy, whatever. Anhedonia is the inability to experience pleasure. So like you described, something that would normally make you hear a song that you'd normally turn it up, you'd get that feeling, you'd be like singing along, whatever. You're just like, whatever. Don't even want to hear it. You're like, I would love to laugh right now. I want to watch a funny movie. You watch it, you just can't even laugh. That's anhedonia. And it's a tough cycle because I go through cycles with that where you want to get out of it by experiencing pleasure, but then you don't feel pleasure from things that you normally would. And that makes you more depressed because you're like, well, what's the point? And that's where you get into that loop that can be really hard to get out of, and why depression is so tricky, because when you're in it, it's hard to get out of it. Yeah. It's hard to find the things that lift you out of it. And even when people say like, well, you need to get outside and you need to do the things that you enjoy. It's like, I don't enjoy those things right now. They don't have it. I don't have any motivation to do those things because they don't even feel good to me right now. They feel like they would just be like lifting a mountain to try to do them.
And that's where something like medication can be helpful, because it's not, people get it wrong thinking that, oh, this is going to cure my depression. No, it's going to lift that rock that's on your shoulders enough that you can deal with whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Where you can actually have like a conversation with a therapist or a friend that's productive in terms of working through whatever is causing that, or to start exercising a little bit so that you can get some endorphins going, and that might help just the neurotransmitters in your brain. Because depression on a clinical level is cyclical. It is chemical. When you're having extreme depression, there's just neurotransmitters that are not firing or not absorbing in your brain that is making it really difficult. Endorphins and dopamine and serotonin, like your levels are off when you're in that place. And that doesn't just happen because something sad happened. Right. You can get depressed because something sad happened. And when people are grieving, they go through cycles of depression. But there are also people that have clinical depression because it runs in their family, or because that's just their brain chemistry. They have these cycles that they go through where they end up. And those people, more so than somebody that's just sad, really can benefit from medication for the reasons you described. Because if you have, for instance, like severe bipolar depression, you go through weeks and months, a period where you're really not functioning, like sitting and wallowing in that is not going to be good. It's actually going to be potentially really, there's a lot of outcomes that can be terrible from that tragic. So medication is really called for in those instances, because hopefully it just gives you that enough of a kick where you're able to engage in productive pursuits that pull you out of it, or at least get through that cycle so that you know that when it ends, you're going to return to. You
said unipolar depression before. I'd never heard that term either. Obviously bipolar being we're swinging from mania to, what is unipolar? Just you're depressed all the time?
Just meaning you're not experiencing mania. So unipolar as opposed to bipolar.
Oh, okay. So you're just going from baseline to depressed, not depressed to manic.
Right. And there's different forms of depression. Most common one we hear about is major depressive disorder, MDD. Those can be relatively short episodes. You only need one to be diagnosed with MDD. A major depressive episode, which can be, a week, or so of what we're describing, like just not experiencing pleasure, not wanting to get out of bed, not eating as much, not responding to people and things that you normally would, losing interest in your normal activities. If it qualifies, meets the criteria, and one time you would diagnose someone with major depressive disorder. People that have that, it tends to recur.
Yeah.
But those episodes can be really debilitating. You know, you go into an episode and you're just kind of checked out for a week, sometimes more, a couple weeks, a month. But then there's also like persistent forms where it's maybe not as deep, but you go a year or two where you're just always kind of what you're describing, where you're just not really enjoying life. You're just feeling like a little checked out, not feeling motivated. If that drags on for too long, even if it's not the really, really deep major depression, of course, you don't want to be sitting in just minor depression for 2 years of your life. Right. You want to, so that's another instance in where maybe it's not severe, maybe it's not to the point, but if no one can tolerate just it being that bummed out or that down for that long a time without it starting to become a habitual experience of life that's negative. So there's different forms of it. It's a long way of saying not everyone experiences it in the same way. But I think that when we say I'm feeling depressed, it's a good descriptor if you know what the difference is.
Yeah.
You don't have to be clinically depressed to say I'm feeling depressed, but it is different than feeling just sad.
Well, I don't ever feel like it's a week I think of it like a headache. Like I kind of have a headache for a day and a half. And much like we've said, giving a name to it has helped with anxiety, you know, saying, hey, just so you know, I'm feeling a little anxious today or whatever. It takes a lot of that pressure off. Telling my wife ahead of time, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of down.
Yeah.
Prepares her for what the next day is going to be like, but it also relieves some of that pressure from me where I don't have to be performative. I don't have to, you know, pick myself up. And even she can say to my son, like, Dad's feeling depressed, whatever. Obviously, I think a lot of us have felt that a lot more in the last 5 years, COVID, 10 years, political spectrum.
Yeah.
Ironically, at the time of this recording, we may be entering a little bit of a sliver of what is this thing we call? Is it actual hope? Is there a little positivity that's come out in the world lately? And I feel like we should talk about it because it's been a while since we've had the ability to kind of do that. Election day was last Tuesday. There was a very major, clear shift in this country in terms of pushing back, which we talked about. There's always a pendulum swing. In 2024, the House, the Senate, the White House, they all went, you know, Republican. Now in midterm elections, people are starting to come back the other way. It still feels a little bit like something that can give us some hope. There's a little bit of people realizing that maybe cruelty or, you know, closed-mindedness isn't necessarily the path of the future. What are your thoughts on any of that stuff? I mean, do you feel any of that hope? Do you feel?
I do, and I'm glad that you phrased it the way that you did, because I do recognize that there's anytime we've tried to broach the subject of politics or just what's going on in our society, in our country, in the world, and everything, it's always just we're so burdened by this heaviness of at best the unknown, and at worst, you know, a lot of really depressing feelings about where we're at and where we're headed. And this is the first moment, I think probably since we've started this show, that is like, we need to take a moment to recognize that what is this weird thing?
Right.
Hope. We haven't felt this in so long. I'm feeling personally cautiously optimistic at this moment. I think I'm realistic in terms of the challenges and obstacles we still face to try to turn this moment of shifting intensity and a little bit of a win to take that into something that it's substantive, that's actually going to, you know, have things heading in the right direction. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of things that could still go wrong. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I am feeling hopeful. I'm tempted to point out the things that I'm still, you know, feeling nervous about, but at the same time, I don't want to throw a wet blanket on what you just said. I don't really want to. I don't think I do want to spend too much time, because I like the way that you said it. I think I do want to, for the purposes of this conversation, focus on what is good. I think we need that right now, right? I mean, I don't know. We can have a whole other conversation about politics.
I mean, one thing, what was it? 14 states elected female governors?
Yeah.
Is that what the number was?
I mean, I'll take your word for it.
I think that's true. If I'm wrong, fact check me. I apologize, but that's pretty awesome.
Put it in the comments.
Yeah. You know, I think it was Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg who someone asked, like, how many women would be enough on the Supreme Court? And she was like, why not all of them? Like, it's been all men for so many years.
Right.
Not that 14, it's not 50%, it's not even 100%, but it's a start. It's a hell of a lot more than we've had in the past. I think it's wonderful. I think what's happening in New York City is another really interesting conversation to have. Zoran Mandami was elected. I have seen, I don't know if you've seen this, I've seen both sides of this where people are super excited. They think it's like Obama level change and hope and things. And then there are a lot of people who are very, very frightened. A lot of Jews in New York City that I'm friends with think that this is a very scary time. They think that Mandami is anti-Semitic. They think that he's got views that do not align with theirs. I'm in a place where, kind of like, not to give the benefit of the doubt, sounds like I'm not addressing other people's concerns. It's just ignorance. I don't know what the actual truth in those policies are. A lot of things are hearsay, and a lot of things are things like that. But I feel like that hope and that enthusiasm and that youth and that willingness to try something new that hasn't worked for so many years, it's got to be worth some excitement. It's got to be worth some positivity. You know, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm excited just that, I mean, watching Mamdani speak, he clearly is connecting in a way, regardless of whether you agree with all of the specifics of his platform. And if you have concerns about his religion, his belief about Israel, all that stuff. Those aren't things that have weighed heavily on my mind. For me, I mean, I'm excited that there's somebody out there that's connecting.
Yeah.
I'm excited that we have a template in terms of how to connect with young people and to motivate people to vote. Maybe in a bubble of New York City and Brooklyn in particular, that's very liberal. How does that translate to the rest of the country? I don't know.
Staten Island. Staten Island went strong for Cuomo.
But my fears more have to do with, and I'm Jewish, so I mean, his religion and his views on Israel I don't know, maybe I haven't seen the things that people are referring to. That's not really on my radar. Like, I'm not jumping to the conclusion that he's dangerous to Jews or that he's anti-Semitic or anything like that. My primary concern when I think about all of this, I'm just putting it in the bigger framework of, we have a midterm election that we must win. Whatever it takes. So much so that I voted for Prop 50, which in another time and place I may not have, because I don't like gerrymandering. I wish that we could have gone the other direction and found a way to get rid of it altogether. But the reality of the situation is, and I was thinking about you when I was deciding whether I was going to vote for it or not, because you know, we've had political conversations where, like, sometimes you just need to make a stand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but if you go against your own principles, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're becoming the thing that you detest. And it's like, well, what else are we going to do? Just roll over?
Yeah.
And just let them take it and just say, it's okay, it's done then. I'm going to stand on my principles.
At least, no. Sometimes you have to play the game, and it feels a little dirty.
I mean, it's not illegal, and it's not, I mean, I feel like it's something we need to work towards, and so it's a whole other conversation in terms of just voting in this country and gerrymandering and all that redistricting.
But the difference is, allow me, sorry to interrupt you. The difference is that this is a response to what happened in Texas.
Yeah.
The difference is that Prop 50, it was a vote. In Texas, they just did it.
Right.
Here we were like, should we do this to combat what happened in Texas? And also, it goes back in 2030 or something, right? So we being the Democratic Party, put in these safeguards to say, we understand this is gross, but it's necessary. And we'll put in some safeguards so if it doesn't work or we feel dirty after the fact, we can retroactively go back and fix it. So I think there's a little bit of you can hang your hat on that. Like, yeah, we did it, but it's kind of like the Patriot Act. And after that's the parallel. And like, we have to do this for our freedoms, but at what cost?
Well, for me, there's a line that I mean, maybe this is an unclear boundary to some, but I try to, at least maybe it's rationalizing for me, to like, where is the line in terms of what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not? What goes too far in terms of not being consistent with our principles and American values and what we actually consider democracy to be? A big part of what I consider to be democracy is not just, freedom and everyone having the ability to do what they want. It's checks and balances on power. Like, if you're talking about the difference between tyranny and freedom and democracy, there's a reason why our Constitution is built to have checks and balances. There's ways to check power. When power goes unchecked because corruption is ruling, and there are things you need to do that are legal, and like you said, the people voting to do it, that still, even though it feels icky, is on that side of the boundary for me of that's American democracy. That's people standing up to tyranny, right? And the thing that I'm most concerned with, like I said, is we need this democracy to hold. We need the midterm elections to be a check on power. We need to not have one ruling class ruling all of the branches of our democracy, and very actively trying to overturn the things that will be a check and a balance on that power. And so that when 2028 comes, we have an election like that. Those are the stakes in my mind, not to take it back to a really depressing place, but I was
just say this started as a conversation about hope. We're not being very hopeful.
And I'm feeling hopeful in this moment because we did something that says we're gathering steam. We're going to do what is required to address those things that I just described. My fears are just that, like, forgetting my feelings about Mamdani and whether any of the things that people are saying about him are true or false or made up or just projections of, right-wing propaganda. Just the term socialism scares the hell out of me because I know that it's like look, I even support a lot of social programs. I think we have programs in this country already that are socialism that I think are good ideas. And again, to the extent that it falls into checks and balances, when capitalism has gotten so out of whack that people can't eat and there's no opportunities to feed your family and to grow any wealth, and the 1% are controlling all of the wealth, there needs to be a check on that imbalance in our society, and social programs is a way of doing that. I do think it's a spectrum just like anything else, and the word socialism has become so toxic that when somebody uses it willingly, it works within the bubble of people that are excited by the idea of the things I'm describing in terms of programs to feed the poor, programs to create more housing, programs like those are beautiful things if they can be done within the framework of a free market economy that everyone is benefiting from more opportunity and more, ability to take care of yourself and your family. But when it becomes synonymous with communism, when it becomes synonymous with in the other parts of the country, because we know Brooklyn is going to vote for whoever the Democratic candidate is in the general election, but we don't know in Ohio and in Florida. And if they perceive the Democratic Party as having gone that far to the left, that ends up potentially shooting ourselves in the foot. I hate having to think that way, but again, that's what the level of what we're facing at this moment in history makes me concerned about. Like, we have to do everything right in the next 2 years, 3 years to save this democracy.
But here's my counterpoint to it, is that I think we sometimes maybe underestimate the general public, not just Brooklyn, Ohio, wherever. I mean, look what trying to play it safe has gotten us the last 8 years. You know what I mean? Joe Biden squeaked through because but it wasn't anybody's first choice. No one was thrilled with it. It was just sort of like it was better than the alternative. If we ignore the things that resonate with voters at our own peril. There is a reason that Bernie was so popular but pushed aside by the Democratic Party, because they were like, that doesn't align with the general beliefs. Anytime someone comes out and makes a stand, Mamdani is the same way. Whether or not campaign claims are realistic or feasible or even going to be able to implement many of them, just the enthusiasm and the hope of a new direction is enough to get people engaged.
To get young people engaged, which is important, but young people don't vote in general.
Right.
And what wins elections is swing states and the gettable swing voters, moderates, independents. Those people are motivated to vote at this moment in history. The only thing that could happen is they could be scared off by something they perceive to be too radical. So that's what my concern is. It has nothing to do with what is real or anything. It has to do with perception.
Yeah.
And yes, we want to motivate the youth, and we want to have, I just think it's not an either or proposition. It's another situation where we can think of this in very binary terms. It's like, well, let's try to be safe, or let's try to be progressive, and like let's have a revolution.
Run AOC and let her go crazy.
And the thing is, when AOC first came out, I had the same reaction. I had my concerns like, this is going to piss a lot of people off, and it did. And she became a poster child for everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party to a lot of people that are moderates and right wing and stuff. And not that we're going to ever get the far right, but moderates are gettable. And so I've heard her say a lot of things, and I've watched her career from afar. And there's a lot of things that I like about her. And I don't necessarily think 100% she's not somebody that could evolve into somebody that's a unifying candidate. I don't know. That remains to be seen. It scares me a little bit. And because it's not an either or proposition, it's a both and. In order to win, you look at like, why was Obama so successful? He was what you're describing. He was somebody that energized young people who normally sit on the sidelines because they're disillusioned by the entire process. He really rejuvenated the passion and the interest in politics for people that a lot of times get checked out. But he also was a safe feeling to moderates. Yeah. He was not a radical. If anything, the knock would be he's too moderate. I mean, he didn't really go far enough. I mean, even the giving the healthcare for all, it was Mitt Romney's like Utah a plan that became Obamacare that they're all describing as socialism, which it's not. I mean, it's a pretty reasonable thing that we could have gone further probably with, and I think we can or should. However, the point being, the reason why that was such a moment, why he won and why we were able to have that sort of Jackie Robinson moment, a breakthrough, is because it was the perfect storm of somebody that did motivate moderates and progressives. The big tent party came together and really rallied behind this person who, I mean, yes, you could say he was a black man. He had a name that scared the hell out of people, but he didn't come out and say, I'm a socialist. I mean, like that's just doing that shows to me a little bit of being in a bubble. It's not that it's not even inaccurate. Like socialism in its inception is not a bad thing in my mind, but it just is a dirty word now to like 90% of the public, other than the 10% that live in Oregon and Vermont and Brooklyn.
Well, if people stopped for 2 seconds and really thought about how many social programs they already enjoy, it's really healthcare and education. It's like those are the two main, like you want to give people free healthcare and free education while you're a socialist.
Yeah, it's like keep your government hands off my food stamps.
Right. Again, meanwhile, all your police, all your your fire department, all your streets, all your infrastructure, that's all socialized. That your unemployment, all the things that keep things going. But it's like I said, if people took a step back and weren't so frightened by the word, they'd realize they're already in a socialist democratic society. You know what I mean?
And I wish we didn't have to think in those ways, and maybe I am being too safe, but again, I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. I don't think we should be going for the safe bet. I don't think we need another old white guy like Joe Biden who's been in the Senate for 1 million years. At this moment in history, that's probably not the right choice. But at the same time, I don't think we need Fidel Castro, Yeah. So like to me, there's a happy medium where it's somebody that's progressive, that energizes the youth and feels like we're going to be fighting for the things that we care about. We're going to be standing on our ideals, but we're also going to be pragmatic, because I think that the right can be too cynical, the left can be too idealistic. And when that becomes a problem is when you're addressing the world the way you would like it to be as opposed to as it is. I think we should be fighting for the world to be the way we would like it to be, but we should be addressing it for what it is at this moment in history.
And that reminds me of, I think it was Obama on Maron's last podcast where he talked about the ACA and Obamacare. And he said, is it what we wanted? No, but it was what we could get. And was it going to be better than it was the day before? Yes. So that was the only factor. It wasn't an all or nothing proposition. It wasn't, we're either going to give free health care to everybody in America or we're going to stick with how it is. No, we're going to make an incremental change that is going to give 40 million people more healthcare. That's progress. It's one thing at a time. It's an oil tanker turning. And yes, it's scary to go from, the establishment to Mondani, who feels like this huge left turn. And that, like you say, that I understand that kind of a little bit more of a moderate approach, but sometimes it takes a wake-up call. As I've said, the last few years of look what trying to play it safe has gotten us.
But again, I'm not arguing for playing it safe.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying in general, like that's the sort of, that's why I'm not mad at people taking wild swings and being
I'm just saying I get and I agree with the argument you were making that I hear a lot of, like, let's not disregard where the energy is. Let's just not just sweep aside the Bernie bros and the people. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but let's not sweep aside the moderates and the centrists in doing so, you know, because then you're really shooting yourself in the foot. We need in those swing states moderates and independents to vote for the Democrat. And so, it's complicated. There's a debate to be had, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about it in this way, because I think that it is another one of those things, like so many conversations we have, that it's really easy to slip into binary terms and be like, well, we're either doing this or we're doing that. It's like, no, there's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of nuance to this, and there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot that's hopeful. But we can also rationally understand the concerns that people have about somebody like Mamdani, and like how much of this is actually going too far, or potentially, you know, a bridge too far in terms of what is capitalism versus what is another form of economy completely, and what would actually maybe not be the most wise from a political standpoint, but also just in terms of, I'm not an economist, so I can't sit here and tell you whether, when I hear somebody who is an economist on TV talking about, well, you can't just control prices in that way. That's totalitarianism. You can't just say, well, prices are out of control. Let's just put our finger on the scale and say we're going to fix that without fixing the economy first. I don't know the ins and outs of that to be able to speak really in an educated way in terms of like what makes economic growth most feasible. But I do know that people have those concerns, and they're not just far right people. Right. There are a lot of the middle of this country that just are starting small businesses and are concerned about maintaining the American dream or recreating the American dream if it's gone away completely. And like, what does it mean for businesses? What does it mean for every time you put your finger on the scale and you say, those are legitimate concerns, even if he has a plan that is going to work. We need to address those people's concerns, I guess what I'm saying, because those people need to feel safe that the thing that they're voting for is not going to destroy the American way of life.
And also, to tie it back into the conversation we had about relationships, we also have to take into consideration what a vote for Mamdani means to your relationship with a friend who might have the opposite opinion. You know, that's the thing that troubles me so much, is like, I want to be supportive of my friend, and I also want to be hopeful about the future of this country. So, and if those two things are at odds, sometimes it's a really difficult place to be in. You know, I mean, I have some Jewish friends who are 100% anti-Mamdani, and it's not like they're a Trump supporter and I go, you're crazy, you're an idiot. I go, maybe you're right, and I don't want you to think that my supporting him means I'm against you. You know, and it's the same as like the Israel-Palestine discussion, where you cannot have a kind of well, I don't think people in Gaza there shouldn't be genocide, but I also don't think that what happened to all the hostages was okay. Like, those two things can both be true. Yeah. And it's such a difficult conversation when people get so polarized of, if you say this, you're against me, and that's the bottom line, and it's not how it is.
Well, you know, it is a scary time.
That wasn't very eloquent.
No, it was. I understood what you were saying. Yeah. I do think it's a scary time for Jews in this world, as it has been so many times in the past. And I think that we talked earlier about triggers and from the past and past trauma. Like, anytime that anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, it brings up a lot of history for Jews, rightfully so. Yeah. And I mean, I spent, I guess, a lot of my life in a privileged place where I thought that was the thing of the past. Right. It was like, when my family, who were of the generation of World War II, would talk about it at Passover Seder, I'd be like, oh, hey guys, you know, like, you're living in the past. That's not the world we live in today. Yeah. And I was proven wrong, because this stuff just keeps coming up. And you see the vitriol that comes out, and it's been so shocking to me that it's on the left now, you know, and you have people that are really misconstruing support for Israel, or going against support for Israel with being anti-Semitic. Yeah. Like, it's like, you can question Israel and their government in the same way that I question our government here. Yeah. And still be a good Jew. You know what I mean? Like, the two are not the same thing. It's a country. Yeah. At least in my mind, it's not a divine state that's ordained by God. I'm sure we could get a lot of comments on that. But the point being that it's scary that people are coming out and that otherwise I would consider to be compassionate people, progressive people, and they seem to be coming out pretty hard on not just the state of Israel, but on Jews in general. And so when you see, maybe Mamdani is, maybe he isn't. I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that he's a scary figure, other than the fact that he's a Muslim, which maybe you're making a leap there. But I can understand. We talk about empathy on this show. You know, I can put myself in the shoes of people who are scared of him, to see like, well, we've come to this place where you have young people protesting Jewishness on college campuses, you know? Yeah. And then you see a city as big as New York electing a guy who is in that camp in terms of being anti-Israel in those same ways. It
sends a message.
It sends a message that I understand. If you are really fearful of the direction we're going in terms of anti-Semitism in our culture, that would be an indicator of like, oh, holy shit, how much is this problem getting out of hand? So, I mean, more will be revealed. Again, I haven't seen anything personally. Maybe I just haven't watched enough to see the things that they're talking about with Mamdani specifically. But it is a problem. It is something that has been coming up more and more and needs to be addressed in one way or another.
When I was, this is a confession but I'm comfortable saying it because it speaks to how little it was an issue when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I grew up in a place with no Jews, basically. I had 2 kids who were half Jews in my school, but that was it. You know how the conversation of like, when people are like, well, when I say something's gay, I'm not being homophobic. I'm just saying like, it's lame. Right. That was when I was a kid, making fun of Jews I didn't even think of it as a hurtful hate speech type of thing. It was just like making a blonde joke. It was like, oh, Jews, they like money. Or like, it was so casually thrown around, that anti-Semitism, because I didn't live in a place like LA or New York where there were a lot of Jewish people. So I didn't even know that it was a social group that could be offended in that way. You know what I mean? Like, and so I partook in that the same way that I did make how many blondes does it take to change a light bulb or whatever, you know what I mean? So there was a real lack of acknowledgement of anti-Semitism, because I don't even know how to express this, that I didn't even know it was a thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? And not until I got older, when I looked back and went, oh my God, the things that I said were so hateful and so horrible. I just didn't even know that there was a person behind it. I thought it was you know what I mean? And so I don't even know why I'm sharing that.
No, I understand that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I've reflected on things that I might have said growing up, and perspectives that I had that came from ignorance, or just parroting what other people were saying and not even knowing exactly what it meant or what the implication was or how hurtful it could be. And I carry those things in my mind with shame, I suppose, to a certain extent, rightfully so. Like, you should be ashamed of things you did that were ignorant or bigoted. Yeah. However, I have to give myself a pass, recognizing like, I really didn't know.
That's what I mean.
I really was just ignorant, and I hadn't been exposed. And a couple things leap to mind that I hesitate to share, but it's kind of like, thank God, iPhones didn't exist in those days. Can you imagine like being an idiot kid and not knowing something and using a word or saying something that's hurtful, and then it's there forever and it's on the internet? I have empathy for young people that we jump in this day and age right to somebody is a bigot.
Yeah, a lot of kids who were like trying to go to college for sports, and videos come out of them when they were a sophomore in high school making racial slurs and things like that they're just part of a gang of guys who are yelling. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuance there.
Well, I went to a public elementary school in LA, right in the middle of LA. And we had a really diverse student body. I mean, there were black kids, there were Asian kids, there were Latin American, white, everything in between. And my friend circle was like a United Colors of Benetton ad. It was lovely. I mean, I'm so glad I had that experience. But there were kids playing on the blacktop that were in gangs in this school, because there were kids from the inner city and there was a lot of different influence. And so the language that was thrown around a lot of times, I just thought it was slang. Yeah. And so, I mean, the N-word was used daily. And I remember, I have a specific memory. It wasn't something I went around saying all the time, but I was over at a friend's house and we were like roughhousing, and his dad was in earshot, and I used the N-word. Now, granted, I obviously didn't know what it meant specifically. I was probably 6 years old, 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, maybe it was 8. I don't know. But I thought it was just a playful term of endearment that you used when you're roughhousing with your friends, you know? And my friend's dad like stopped us immediately. And he was like, we do not use that word in this house. And I was like, what did I do?
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And I don't know if I went home and asked my parents what it meant exactly, or I just found out later the history of that word. And in some ways it's beautiful how innocent I was. Like that wasn't even a factor in my mind. Like in the same way you're describing it, my mind didn't go to that's like a hurtful thing. It was just, I've heard people that are that color using that word and
as a term of endearment to each other or a term of playfulness.
And so, and then I felt a lot of shame having used that word. And so I don't know, we need to give people a little bit of leeway in terms of when they learn things. I think we jump to somebody is a bad person or somebody is, I did the same. You mentioned the word gay. Like I am the least homophobic person you're going to meet, but I did use the word gay to mean music that was
not cool
or not, because I was into hard rock, something that was not hard enough to me. I would just, and I had a teacher in the pep band in high school, I guess, or when I was in middle school, I guess it would have been like maybe 13, 14. And I was like, oh, that song is so gay. And he's like, what did you say? And thankfully, this teacher like called me out on it again. And I think I was at the age then and I was like rebellious, like, oh, he's old. He doesn't get it. But then reflecting on it and at a later time, I recognized like, yeah, why do I know what that word means? Like I've compartmentalized it in my head somehow, as we all did, it seems like, as kids. Like, it doesn't mean I'm derogatory towards gay people. It just means that it's an adjective that means that something is not cool or whatever. And that, I think I've gone out of my way to like make amends for that because I was like, God, I was such a stupid kid. And, but again, it was just like, I was probably 14 years old. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I think we do have to come to a place where we recognize, we were talking about this on a recent episode. Like if you jump right to, somebody has a different perspective and you just jump right to, well, this person is a bad person, or they are bigoted, or they're evil in some way, as opposed to like, let me understand their perspective. Why would they say that? Where do they come from? Where does that perspective come from?
Yeah.
And maybe at the end of the day, they are evil. Maybe they are bigoted, whatever. But they may even have their reasons why that make sense to them. And just understanding where they come from a little bit better. Like, for instance, just these people, these friends of yours that have concerns about somebody. I'm guessing at any other time in history, they wouldn't have been anti-Muslim or hateful people, but they're feeling threatened. And when you feel threatened, sometimes you lash out. Or it changes your perspective of the world.
You know what it is? The way that they are reacting to Mamdani is the exact same way that we collectively, as liberals, reacted to Trump.
Yeah.
And so I want to give the benefit of the doubt. Like, if they see something that makes them react as harshly to him as we did to Trump,
let's understand it.
Then I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they know something I don't know. I'm not going to be like, you guys are crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I want to empathize, And so I was having a conversation with my wife the other day about, there's a reason why people talk about the South and the politeness and the people and the willingness of people will give you the shirt off their back. And yet those are the regions that are constantly voting with the cruelest and most harmful policies to those who need the most help. And that's the kind of dichotomy of the society that we live in. That if there's a person in front of you who needs help, they will help. But the faceless people, well, those we can't be bothered to help. But we have to look out for ourselves, And it's such a difficult line to walk of the person who will be the sweetest, most helpful, most giving person to someone whose car broke down right in front of them will not even look in the direction of people who are undocumented who need help, or people who need SNAP and food assistance. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I can't look at you because that's against our politics. There's such a contradiction in the way people react to a person versus people.
Yeah, I think to bring this conversation full circle,
keep going
to something we were talking about earlier. We all fall short of being the human beings we'd like to be to a certain degree. And I think that the takeaway for me is like, we do want to have our ideals and our values and try to be moving towards them as much as we can, but also have understanding when we're falling short and when other people fall short, that sometimes it's just rationalization. Sometimes it's just compartmentalization. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody's a bad person. We have to be able to, if all of this is going to work out in some way, that this country is going to get back on the right track, we're going to have to meet back in the middle one way or another. Yeah. There's no way that all the people that are scary on the right are going to become like socialists. Yeah. And there's no way that the people who are on that end are going to all of a sudden become Trumpers. Like, that's not going to be the solution, is that we all align on one of those poles. Mm-hmm. Only way we're going to get back to some semblance of what we have enjoyed of the privilege of American democracy is if we find a way to get back to the middle. And doesn't mean abandoning our ideals or not working towards a better world. It just means being a little bit more understanding, walking the walk of empathy and incremental change, progress, but then also standing up. I mean, it's a tough line to walk, because there are times when you just have to stand up for things. And we're kind of in that moment in terms of the democracy holding or not. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm just trying to walk this walk the best I can. And I'm sure that I fail along the way when we talk about these things sometimes, but the more that we're able to have nuanced conversations in our culture and be the model of empathy and understanding, right, hopefully that becomes more of the trend.
And that's what we're trying to do with these conversations, is show that there's no consensus here. Yeah. Like, it's not like we have the answer and we have the secret. It's that we don't know, but we acknowledge that we don't know. And we're just, every day is sort of just a journey to try to find that common ground.
Yeah, the last thing I'd want to do is get on my soapbox the way that so many people do these days. And you see a talking head that seems to like, here's the answer.
Right.
Every now and then there's somebody that comes along that comes up with an answer you haven't thought of, and it's really profound, and we all should rally behind that. But in general, that's usually just somebody trying to get attention for some agenda. And I'm always a little wary of somebody who's like, I have the answers. And there's one, only I can fix it. That's where we've gotten to.
And maybe that's why our podcast isn't top 10, because we're not making bold, like, making a stance, even if it's the wrong stance, just to drive engagement. But
a hot take.
I'd rather be open and admit the things that we don't know, and like you say, stand up for the things that we believe in, which is that there's gray areas in the world.
Yeah. So but that being said, go Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're there's a little bit of hope. Let's end on the hopefulness. Yeah. I do feel like it's a good indicator of what we can do when we apply ourselves in the right way. Right. And there's lessons to be learned how we take that into the next couple of years of our culture. And thank you for sharing vulnerability today about your experiences, some of the stuff that we talked about earlier. That's all relevant too, to us being human beings and understanding each other better.
Yeah. I love these conversations that you and I have, because we've talked about that the intros to our shows are sometimes our favorite part, and it allows us to kind of hash this stuff out, and it's like a real-time therapy session for both of us. Yeah. We're just kind of emotionally vomiting it all out there. It's just for everyone to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as well.
All right. Well, we'll call it a day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes. We'll see you next week right here on the Harder to Breathe podcast.
Hey guys, Duck here. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Harder to Breathe podcast. If you liked what you saw, feel free to go ahead and click the links here on the screen for older episodes, and be sure to subscribe. Click that subscribe button, and then you'll get notification about new episodes as they come out every Tuesday. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Harder to Breathe podcast.